It's got a lovely long bonnet, which is an absolute signature of authentic SUVs. This is not a east-west engine, this is proper body-on-frame, as Vijay mentioned, which gives you this incredible proportion of a long hood and a cabin that follows with all that power sitting in front of the driver. And tomorrow when you'll notice the wheels and the wheel arches, all that muscle is concentrated and focused on that wheel to deliver that power to the road. The A-pillar angle, what we call the windscreen angle, is a very, very important part of car design, of vehicle design. And SUVs, as you know, have a slightly more upright A-pillar. Again, to get the proportions absolutely right. And the other thing is the glass to metal ratio. You'll notice on the new Scorpio, or the Scorpio N, that ratio is very, very tight and very dynamic. Again, the metal gives you that feeling of strength and muscle. There you go. Now, as a part of our process, global design process, we use clay models. How do you humanize the design if a human being does not touch that design? So we have very, very skilled craftsmen, we call them clay modelers, who actually recreate all those sketches that you saw into a full-size clay model. And there you see immediately that dominating front, and in the interiors, and we'll speak about it more, the top-notch craftsmanship. Everything fits beautifully. The sophistication that Vijay mentioned. Now, coming to sophistication, here the colors, materials, and finishes become very important. And again, we've used really premium materials to trim the seats, to trim the door pads, and then a fantastic bright metal finish for the dual rails that you'll see on the IP, and you'll see on the door armrests, this door grab. It's a real feeling of solidity, like the chassis, Velusan's platform is almost coming through the vehicle to hold it all together. I'll just play a little animation that will show you some of the features. Aircon vents in the rear, of course. This coffee black interior, largest sunroof. This stacked tail lamp, what a signature. It looks stunning. And of course, the new logo integrated into the car. The Scorpion Sting. The big 17, 18-inch wheels. And again, the little Scorpio tail signature in the DRLs. Very purposeful lamps and that super powerful grille. That grille which I had seen and I moved away. And I hope the Scorpio N does the same thing for years to come. So with that, I will now pass on to Velu. Velu will talk about all the technical details and what went in to bring the Scorpio N to life. Beneath this amazing skin, the magic that MRV and MNATC created. Velu-san.
Welcome to Daddy's Den. The all-new Scorpio N, the big daddy of SUVs, is here.
Thank you, Rajesh, Vijay, and Pratap. What a great gathering. A warm welcome, a hearty welcome. Before I start my speech, let me bow in front of you and then say heartfelt appreciations and compliments to the supplier community, to the dealers, to so many people and our own colleagues who have worked for this product throughout the COVID pandemic for the last 2 years Unbelievably, they have chased the COVID away and brought this product to this stage. And therefore, let me take once again one more bow to all of you. Thank you. It's always said, Big Daddy. 20 years ago, I started my career in Scorpio engine development. I never knew that 2 decades have passed, and the Scorpio will safeguard our SUV business. And the time has come for us to safeguard the SUV of the road, the Big Daddy, for next 2 decades. So this time, we didn't take a normal approach. We took a different approach. The approach is very different. This world has been changed by many people, by simple observations. The questions are always asked, do you have the competency to bring the best? Do you have the knowledge power? Do you have the facilities to bring the best? I have always found answers that if you ask powerful questions, you can always bring the best. That's the only thing that you need. Rest you can get from everywhere in this world. So let me start with my own personal readings. BC 330, when Aristotle saw, and he dropped to a big object and a small object, and he saw the big object moving faster than the small object, and he wrote it. The big object moves faster than the smaller object, and that stayed until 1587, till a man called Galileo came and saw, oh, that's not the case. He was doing an experiment on friction by rolling small balls and big balls on a slanted wooden surface, and he made graduations on it, and he was standing and observing. And he put the ball, and the smaller ball and the bigger ball, they all reached at the same time. And in the graduations, he calculated, and he came to a number 9.8 meters per second. And the second, you add another 9.81. Let's take 10. So first second is 10, and the second is 20. This is always constant. This addition of constant velocity, he called it acceleration. That's how you still see it. What Aristotle perceived and what Galileo perceived is the power of observation. It's just that he made some marks and he observed. There was no clock in 1587. Then came Newton, 100 years later, 1687. It was a pandemic, and he left Cambridge and he went to his mother's house. Mother's house means mother's house. It was an apple tree, and the apple supposed to be fallen on his head. It was always a discussion, how can the small ball and the big ball fall at the same velocity, but the big ball creates a big impact and a small ball creates a small impact. That's a discussion for over 100 years. Newton saw apple falling, and he said, oh, if this apple is falling, there is a force. And that force is what Galileo found, the 9.8 acceleration, and the mass of the apple, that is the force. So he found an answer for the 100 years of discussion. Now this is a critical observation. So it is this critical observation that I am going to tell you how a Big Daddy can deliver you the best dynamics at 185 km per hour with 175 bhp and 400 Newton meter torques of a diesel engine and 200 bhp of a gasoline engine with 370 Newton meter. Believe me, I drove it in last Saturday at 185 km per hour in MSPT track, and I'm alive here. Nothing happens. Big Daddy is very safe, and Big Daddy, except the Scorpio name, we don't carry anything else. Here is what the critical observations that led to this transformational improvements in the new avatar of platform and body. Let me talk the vehicle architecture that gave these benefits to us. It looks easy that in the third row, you increase your leg space by 85 millimeter, and your visibility angle, you increase by 6%, that's a lot. And everywhere else, you increase between 30 millimeter to 50 millimeter. The shoulder width, you are increasing by 3%, that is again about 57 millimeters. So the shoulder width is increased, that means wheel track is increased. Your leg room is significantly increased. I'm an 170 centimeter guy. That means in millimeter terms, I will be 1,700 millimeters. But look at, I have more than 1,000 millimeters. So if you take this dimension 1,000 and this dimension 1,000, that's where I'm going to sit. I have 2,000 millimeters. Isn't it big, Daddy? Isn't it big? I vouch you that you sit in the third row. You can't get such an excellent leg room in any other so-called D segment SUVs, full stop. But such a big car needs Aristotle, Galileo's, and Newton's, and Einstein that we can discuss later. I have a phenomenal explanation how Einstein beat the Newton. Tomorrow in Ambi Valley we'll discuss. Observation number 1. We always discuss center of gravity, center of gravity, center of gravity. Like Galileo said, stop. It's not about center of gravity. It is about the roll arm height. You have a chassis. On the top of it, I put a body. What rolls is the body and not the chassis. So therefore, what happens? The roll arm height is very, very important when you are driving at 185 km per hour because the body is rolling on the chassis. So you have a front suspension and you have a rear suspension, and the front suspension is moving like this on a bump, and the rear suspension is moving like this on a bump. The center line of this and the center line of this, if you connect it, you get the roll center for the suspension, but that is very stable. It doesn't move. It only laterally moves. It doesn't roll. What happens is, on top of the frame, you have put a body, and the body rolls. What you need to control, if you have to get the leg room, you need to have the height. So don't worry about the CG. I'm not saying don't worry about at all, but don't unnecessarily worry about it. But just worry about the roll arm height. That's what we did. Our engineering team at MANA, in M&ATC, and MRV, they came with a brilliant idea. Oh, I can play with this roll center and keeping the CG in similar lines of D segment cars, and then significantly reduce the roll arm height better by 8.3%. The roll arm height, 8.3%, significantly adds to your vehicle dynamics at high speeds. I will explain you in the next slide how does that help you. What you see here is the cornering at high speed with 200 bhp, 185 km per hour. There are two parameters that I put it here. The center of gravity that we always unnecessarily keep worrying about it, and the wheel track. There is a spring, the body rolls on the chassis, and there is a spring that supports at high speeds. Because there is a force that is acting on the CG of the body. Do you know what is the force that is acting? I just put the small bullet point. At 120 km per hour, you have 6.2 tons. That's all. But at 180 km per hour, you are getting to 25 tons of the load. Every % of improvement matters here. The centrifugal force that is acting is very simple. The force is mv squared by r. R is the turning radius that you take the car. V is the velocity. The force is squarely proportional to the velocity. So if it is at 6.25 ton at 120 km per hour for ordinary D segment SUVs, for Scorpio N, it can handle 25 tons. It's the best. But you have to have certain dynamics to handle this. The critical observation 2 is that the reaction force that is coming here, the spring, this dimension is so critical. We have increased it by 40 millimeter compared to any other D segment cars. To get the stability factor, wheel track divided by 2 is the counteracting moment for this cornering force. So it's very simple for you. Divide it by 2 and take a ratio of this and this. This should always be higher than this. That's a critical observation 2. As much as you increase this wheel track, you get a shoulder room, you get a stable vehicle, and you get 185 kilometer per hour capability. That's a critical observation 2. So what you see here is 11.9% higher than this value. This value is 11.9% higher, but the segment is 10.5%. As I said, when you are driving at 180 kilometer per hour, every percent matters. And this is the difference between the best and the next best. The third, we discussed that the BIW is sitting on the frame, and the frame is the one that rolls, which means now you know what Newton found, F is equal to ma, and the m, you have to dramatically reduce it. The BIW, we took a call to reduce 13%. Our internal target was 10%. Our team came up with a solution that they will reduce it by 13%. This is one of the main reasons why we have such a low forces at high speeds on the spring acting. If you have very high forces acting on the spring, please remember that you have to make the spring stiff. And if you make the spring stiff, then you will lose the ride. It's not easy. So what we did, I will explain you in the BIW section, but just trust me that it is 13% lighter. Just you notice one thing. The BIW weight is about 300 kgs, and the frame weight is about 200 kgs. Put together is 500 kilos of total 2,000 kilos of vehicle. It's 30%. It's 25%, right? But the vehicle weight is 1,900 kilos, so it is about 26%, 28%. If you control this, you control the affordability. You control the material cost. And therefore, we have to completely redesign the frame and BIW. As I said, the name is carry forward, and my name is Velusamy Ramasamy. Ramasamy is my grandfather, and my name is Velusamy. Just like the Scorpio N bears the Scorpio name, but it does not have anything commonality with the current production Scorpio, for good reasons. Because we need to take that for the next 2 decades. That's the reason we significantly reduce the weight. And then the another 2 terms that they say about frequency, stiffness, and strength. Don't get confused with that. So let me give you 2 minutes to tell you, and you will teach to everybody about frequency and stiffness. You take a glass, you drop it on the floor, it breaks. It does not have a strength. Have you ever tried to bend the glass? You would never be able to, because it is very, very stiff. That's one portion of it. Take a steel wire, and you can do everything, and you can hang. You can do everything. But have you ever tried to break the steel wire? You can never. You will break your hand. So that's strength. The strength and stiffness, if you combine it together, is what the BIW and the frame gives you. And that's the, wherever you are mounting the suspension, the engine, all other mountings that you are mounting, you have to make it very, very stiff. The low ideal frequency of the engine is 28 Hertz. You have to be far above than 28 Hertz, and that gives you 40 Hertz. When the stiffness is very high, you get 40 Hertz and 29 Hertz for the frame. The frame and body cannot have the same frequency that you got it, right? So I hope you understood the strength and the stiffness part of it and frequency part of it. Now, how did we get the strength differently? If you take a BIW and if you take a frame, The first order is typically called the torsional mode, and the second order is typically called the bending mode of the frequencies. You have to be significantly above to anybody else to have such a handling. What our team did was that you can have a ring structure and all the joineries are the weakest points, and you try to join them extremely well, and that's the optimization. That's a critical observation like the Galileo's. And we have significantly enhanced the welding points because you have sheet metals and you need more welding points to behave the sheet metals in unison. And we use structural sealer between the sheet metals, and therefore they behave one unit. And the ring structure. Combined, these two gave us 13% reduction in weight, increased torsional stiffness, increased bending stiffness. That gave us the best ride in handling. The strength that I told about is the breakage of it. In the D segment car or in the C segment car, this car uses the highest percentage of high strength steel. That's about 41% and 11% for ultra high strength steel, taking to 52%. No car in this category uses such a high strength steel and galvanized steel. That takes care of the strength and the corrosion part of it. It's the same thing with frame stiffness and same thing with frame strength. And the stiffness and strength, you have to combine it together to get the best handling and ride and dynamics. In the frame, because it bears the load, we have 81% high strength steel. That comes the favorite topic of this suspension. It's a completely new suspension, front suspension and the rear suspension. Like Galileo's and Newton's found out, we found 3 parameters that makes the biggest difference in a SUV, body-on-frame SUV. Number 1, you need to have a long travel if you have a soft spring. So industry-based 225 millimeters that you can have long travel suspension. Typically you don't get it, you get it about 185, 180 millimeters. The knuckle has to be a little longer, so the geometry of the suspension, toe in, toe out, camper, caster, when you train all angles, it maintains the same. So that's the second. We have used extensively alloy material in order to reduce the unsprung masses in the suspension system, because you attach the suspension system to the frame and that's what is vibrating. And don't forget, F is equal to M into A. If you reduce 35% M, automatically you reduce the forces going to the frame, frame to body. That's the biggest 3 critical inputs. So if you drive tomorrow, you will realize this big difference. That's in the front suspension 30 critical parameter. When it comes to the rear suspension, we made a totally different new suspension. I took the VP0 vehicle January last year, and I went in the track and I found after 150 kilometers per hour, I'm not happy. I don't want to give this to customer. We came back, we completely redesigned, and here are the changes we did. We brought pentalink. Pentalink means 5 links to the frame. The rear axle, this is where the wheel ends are mounted. The rear axle is 90 kilo weight, and the wheels, it moves up and down. And it is compressed and expanded between the frame and the rear axle by the spring. It's a heavy mass. When the vehicle goes longitudinally, you want no relative movement between the rear axle and frame, and that's where the drive it takes place. And therefore, you have 2 links from the axle to the frame in the longitudinal direction. In the vertical direction, you want the highest movement because that's where it absorbs all the vibrations. In the lateral movement, you don't want any movement of the axle with respect to frame. Because at high speed, 180 kilometers per hour, if you turn, if the axle moves, you had it. The panhard, which typically used in the D segment vehicles, allows the lateral movement of the axle. So we did away with that, and we brought the Watt sling. Watt sling is nothing but James Watt, who founded for a steam engine in 1500 and odd years. So all that you have to do is use your grandfather's technology very carefully. And we brought the Watt sling. The Watt sling allows the axle to go up and down under lateral acceleration and never allows to slip. That you will see it when you drive tomorrow in the high speed. So those are the 3 front suspension innovations and the rear suspension innovations. that makes the ride best in handling. But how do you make it best of the best? So there are two critical technologies that I'm going to tell you quickly. Frequency-dependent damping. Forget this name. You go on a road and you get one pump. You are at 60 kilometers per hour, and that comes to 16 meters per second. In 16 meters, you cross in 1 second 16 meters. And if you get one pump input to the suspension, it's called 1 hertz. And typically, the body moves at such a low hertz input. You can also have multiple inputs, but you will watch it, the body does not move, but only the wheel moves. That's called secondary ride. That is this area. The standard dampers give you damping force only like this, blue color. It does not differentiate between the low hertz and the high hertz. So what we did, we brought the technology, latest generation technology on the damper that gives very high stiffness at very low hertz and holds the body. And at high hertz that you see undulations on the highway, it absorbs. It freely allows the damper to absorb the vibrations. It does not pass on to the customer. So body control and undulations observations, absorption of the undulations in the highway is absolutely good with this technology, and that's why we went. Now you take only one input and you start varying the height of this input. That's the next technology. That is multi-tuned valve centerline technology. What you see here is a small velocity, high and bigger one. What you need is like this. When this is smaller, you want to control the body motion. And if it is higher, you want to control the damper motion because you don't want the damper to hit. But what is available in the standard application is only this. So we went for this multi-VCL technology and we brought it. So FDD, MTVCL together takes care of the frequency and the variations in the amplitude. First time in the segment, we bring these two technologies for our customers. Power steering. In the city, 2000 kg vehicle, how do you drive? Feather light. We have a dual pinion. What's the meaning of dual pinion? Nothing. You have a strut and you have a rack and you have a pinion here, and then you have an electric motor with 110 ampere, and this electric motor is coupled to the rack, and that's another motor that gives you power. So this dual pinion gives you very precise steering and very feather light effort for the steering. NVH. In the industry, you can see the articulation index is above 100 and above 97 is way different compared to any other car in the industry because of the brand new engines and the stiffnesses and the low masses that we have in our car, both in terms of sound levels and in terms of articulation index. When you drive tomorrow, you will see it. The Daddy is very powerful, and you have 200 bhp gasoline engine and 175 bhp diesel engine with very high torque. This also comes with a four-wheel drive with multiple terrain movement modes, normal, snow, mud, and sand. In all terrains, you have this Explore technology, 4Explore technology that helps you to keep the traction and stability. Safety. Daddy's dent is a big dent. You have a frame and you have a body, and you don't want any forces to go to body because the body is where the door is attached and the seats are attached. So the 72% of the force is designed to go in the frame, and that deflects very small amount of length. The force that goes into the body, even if it goes to 28%, the 12% and the 2% are brought down here. So after the crash, the door can open without any deformation. It is using the high-strength steel, and it will have the highest standards in the safety. What you see is the added features of the airbag, the 6 airbag. It's a typical standard airbags. You have a driver distance detection software depending on your brake pedal, accelerator pedal, and the steering, that the software automatically detects if you are doing something abnormal to the driving. It gives automatically an alert to you, and the Trironics, you know it very well. The other thing that we have brought is vehicle dynamics control. The vehicle dynamics control detects your wheel slip for each wheels, and if you are trying to go away, the wheel speeds of these different wheels are different, and it applies the brake and brings back to you when you go out of control. That's called vehicle dynamic control system is applied. Rollover mitigation and traction control systems for different new surfaces. So you have all these features inbuilt, what is called dynamics control system in the drive. Let's come to Is Daddy from future. It has a smart core, and it has a Qualcomm 6150 chip, and it has got an 1.8 hertz gigahertz frequency and 23,000 million instructions per second capability. So it has a connected cars, it has an Alexa voice enabled what 3 words, it has navigation system, these are all standard to you, wireless charging, dual camera, and multi-vision camera front and rear merged together. So it's a future tech smart core is available. It also has an immersive Sony audio system, 12 speaker system. You have a, the immersive system is exactly carry over from XUV700, and you have the same experience that you are experiencing in XUV700. The dual zone FATC is a known technology that is already built in this car. Connected cars. In-car apps is the biggest thing in this car. No D-segment car has got such a heavy in-car apps. Rest, you saw my Vijay doing the remote functions. I don't explain much. So the safety, all this, you know it. In the in-car apps, I will spend some few seconds in it. So you have Triloflia that you go to any destination, it tells you attractions, activities, hotels, and tours. It has an AccuWeather, and it has a horoscope. And India Today, Zomato, just dial in, and Ticker Tab to know your stock market prices. So all these apps comes only in D segment Mahindra Scorpio N, not any other D segment cars or C segment cars. Oh, we have to produce it, isn't it? Such a good car, we have to produce it. And there comes a brand new TCF line, a brand new body shop where the car takes a road dip and then gets an absolutely fantastic paint, and the new body shop that gives multi-modal capabilities of different varieties, giving commonality to us. Let me show some video.
daddy of SUVs is here.
So thank you so much, and now I invite Vijay for the wrap-up. Thank you, Vijay.
What should I say? Thank you, Dr. Velu. You know, we love to call him Dr. Velu because his presentations are so deep and he makes such a complex subject so simple for everyone to understand. So it's an honorary PhD that we've given him. Thanks, Dr. Velu. So now we move on to the section that I guess all of you all have been waiting for, which is, all right, you've told us so much about the product, what all it has. Tell us what are the variants and what's the price. And for that, I just want to rewind very quickly the start of the presentation you saw. We spoke about a disruption because it's a product that allows us to be aspirational for the C segment and offers a lot more at a super price compared to all offerings in the D segment today. So one was to kind of summarize everything that we've spoken about. We can put them into these 4 buckets of performance, refinement, presence, and technology. And I'm not going to go through each one of them because I think Velu has covered it in great detail. But the way I'm going to talk you through the varianting and the pricing is in that narrative of what we spoke about, which is even the varianting strategy that we've created has offerings in each of the variants that allows it to compete with very specific opportunities that we see in the market. So to begin with, and I know most presenters begin their presentation with the entry-level variant. But today I'm going to turn it around. And we are going to start with our topmost variant on what it has to offer and where does it stand to compete. Let's have the quick audio visual on the top-end variant. So if we take a look at the top-end variant, the Z8L, that's what we call it. It's clearly a contender that we see to take on the D segment. And if you look at the overall footprint and the high command seating that the Z8L has to offer, with all those features, it makes it an extremely compelling proposition. From a width, height, Velu explained in great detail the advantage that the Scorpio N brings into the category. So let's see where does it stack up vis-a-vis the competition in the D segment. So here are the features, and again, the detailed features you saw in the video, it's a long list. You'll get all the details on the website. Just kind of culled out the key things on one single slide on one side. And I'll come back to what you see as many features in the green color there. And now let's put out the key competitor called TF, the diesel MT in this segment. And compare the specs. You will see that it's a very, very compelling proposition, whether you look at overall performance, whether you look at what we have to offer in terms of safety/technology as a package, or whether you want to talk about convenience, which comes along with a host of features from an overall sophisticated drive dynamics. So as a package, if you see, what's on the left compares or is a very, very compelling proposition compared to what you see on the right. And I think, as many of you all would know, that the TF, the ex-showroom price is 34.29 lakhs. So any guesses? What do you think should be the price of the Z8L? Okay. I guess you guys are going to wait for me to reveal that, right? So it's a very, yeah, you can say that again. And now you understand why I started the presentation the other way around today and not with Z2, which is the entry-level variant. So it's 19.49, which is 45% lower. It again depends how you look at numerator, denominator. And if I was to start from the left, the right side is 55% more expensive. So that's what we have to offer with the Z8L. Let's move on to the next variant, which is the Z8. Again, packed product, packed variant. But let's see the AV before I come to that. Let's have the AV, please. Again, a very compelling proposition. But this time around, let's try and bring it somewhere closer into the C-segment body-on-frame competitors. I mean, again, you want to compare it on footprint, you want to compare it on space, you want to compare it on command seating. Very compelling proposition. So again, you'll see our features on the left, and then we'll talk a little bit about competition. Very compelling proposition, again, has got everything. Most of what you saw on the Z8L is on offer, even on the Z8. You know, whether you talk about the zip, zap, zoom drive modes, which normally is, kind of things kept only for the optional variant. Not going to talk again, but the whole sophisticated ride handling, LED fog lamps, leatherette seats. And in this proposition also, it comes with a combination of sunroof and Adrenox. Now, one would have expected that only in the top end, but we also have it on the Z8. And if we were to compare it again with our competition in the sort of C segment of body on frame, and here is the competition, which is TIC. You can compare it again on all the specs, whether you talk about performance, whether you talk about these features. Clearly something that we offer significantly higher than what the competition has to offer. And the price of that particular variant, the TIC VX Diesel MT of competition, is 22.84. And the Scorpio N Z8 Diesel MT is at a price of 17.49. Again, significantly lower. I mean, from a value point of view, it's 4.5 lakhs. That's a lot. That's a lot. I also want to kind of compare this with the monocoque segment, which obviously, as we all know today, is a significant segment size, number of models, competitors available over there. But again, before we do that, and before we move into the Z6 and the Z4s, let's have the audio-visual on the next variant. So you can see even the Z6 and Z4 have a lot to offer. And again, as we move in, when you start comparing it to other C-segment monocoque SUVs, this time around we want to compare it with another formidable competitor. And what we are going to share with you is how the Z6 and Z4 as two variant strategies work together. You saw the video, the Z6, Z4 both have a lot to offer. As far as the powertrain is concerned, on the Z6 it's at 175 PS, on the Z4 it's 132. Has a host of other features which is available, including the touchscreen, the Adrenox, all of it available up to the Z6 variant. Z4 variant comes with the 20.32 centimeter touchscreen, Android Auto, CarPlay, second row AC. So again, as we move to the Z4, we've retained a lot of comfort, convenience, and technology features for our customers, even for the Z4 variant. And when you compare it with the TS, the equivalent XM diesel MT variant, you can clearly see from the features and specs what we have as an offering in both the Z6 and Z8 variant, significantly higher than competition. Here, as compared to the ex-showroom price of 16.69, we'll share the price of both the Z4 and the Z6 with you. And the Z6 is at 14.99 and the Z4 at 13.99. So I think the prices will speak for themselves and significantly competitive in terms of what we have to offer. And of course, we also have the Z2 variant. And the Z2 is what we believe will also compete with the mass segment. But again, here, another important competitor to look at against when we look at the Z6 and the Z4, as we move into comparing it with mass-based monocoque products from a size, scale, presence, design, features, significantly ahead. And here, as we put out the variants to compare, you will see, again on the left, we have our Z6 and the Z4 variants, which I'm putting out there again for you. And on the right side, you will see the competition called KS, with its HTX diesel MT variant at 15.29, and you had already seen the prices of 14.99 and 13.99. So extremely, extremely compelling in terms of prices. And finally, let's come to the Z2 variant. When you look at the Z2 variant with mainstream SUVs, again in terms of the competitor KS, performance significantly better, price 12.39 and 13.99, and the Z2 is at 12.49. That's the Z2 diesel price. I'm also now going to share with you very quickly, as the mainstream in this segment is gasoline, where we stand with petrol. And for here, on these slides, while the press release, the website will have the pricing of petrol variants in the remaining variants too, at Z2 petrol MT and Z4 petrol MT, the prices as compared to 11.25, that's 11.99 and 13.49. So the entry-level variant of Z2 is at 11.99 and 12.49. So finally, to put it all in perspective, that's what you have, the lineup of our variants, going from Z2 all the way to Z8L. Two important things. We will announce the price of the automatic transmissions and the four-wheel drive variants on 21st July, because as you heard in the webcast, we opened test drives on 5th in the top 30 cities, by 15th rest of the country. We open bookings on 30th. We are giving a 2-week window to our customers to change their variant after they experience the product. You know, it's our customer-centric approach because we've realized that whenever you launch a new model, there are many times the customers want to change because they're not very sure what they want to buy. So we've given them an adequate window, and hence keeping in mind that we open bookings on 30th and there is a 2-week window, we'll be announcing the prices of the automatic transmission and the 4-wheel drive on 21st of July. And another very important point, these launch prices are applicable for the first 25,000 bookings. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's reveal the Scorpio N to you. Thank you.
The all-new Scorpio N, the big daddy of SUVs, is here.